So nature's argument in Stoic philosophy would say that this death is merely another change throughout time. It is not evil.
I think a lot of people put so much pressure and so much emphasis on like keeping a clean society based on religion, but really all that tells me is like, so if there wasn't this belief, then everyone's just going to be bad.
Welcome back to the Deep Plea. In this podcast, we aim to have deep conversations to learn more from the world around us. My name is Karthik. The guy on the other side of the mic is Sven.
Hello, hello.
And today we're talking about God and
Oh
religion.
yeah.
Oh my goodness. Sven,
Big
why don't
topic.
you start this conversation that has been going on for millennia?
Yeah. So I guess to start out in the beginning of like human nature, I think it was kind of a given that once we were able to understand the world around us, we kind of would develop a sense of what's after death or what created us. And in the beginning, I think there were many ideas that like the sun, the moon, the elements like wind and earth all kind of had a part to do with creation or God. And a lot of these religions would look to the sun and worship the sun, for example, because at the time they had limited knowledge about science, for example. And as time went on, they started developing theories of God, of this. Yeah, a lot of times it's represented as like almost like a grown man, human being, whatever it is, at least in mainstream kind of like Christianity. And it's kind of this idea that there's life after death, that you can communicate to this God about things in your life, problems, whatever may it be. And there's a lot of questions that come up when you think about an almighty power. Like I was thinking, God cannot, just to talk about it, God cannot be all powerful or God cannot be all loving if there is evil in this world, if bad things happen, because either bad things happen and God can't stop it, meaning that he's not powerful enough, or bad things happen and God allows it, which means that he's allowing evil, which means that he's on behalf allowing evil to happen, such as watching someone, die or something without intervening. Um, yeah, what do you think about that?
Yeah, so I will divert this conversation while staying on the same topic to the idea of nature and Stoicism. So, to answer your question about evil, nature and Stoicism particularly describes, obviously, Mother Nature, but also another side of the nature of the universe. So, for example, if this certain creator, call him God, call them God perhaps, created this nature of humans that live for, I don't know, 80 years and then die, if that is the lifespan that we are destined to live, right? We
Yeah,
we are born young, and over time our body changes, and then at death our body again changes. So nature's argument in Stoic philosophy would say that this death is merely another change throughout time. It is not evil or perhaps beneficial, maybe as well, in the way that humans may describe it, but it is natural in the sense of universal nature. That's what the universe prescribes to you. It prescribes as well the heat death of the universe, right? So even the universe itself will change and modify itself continuously until this projected heat death, where even that has an expiration date.
right.
So when we talk about this idea of evil, well, if we assume that this higher power, which governs us, has laid out these specific rules, those rules may be above our understanding, for example.
Yeah,
And so we may not be the best people to evaluate those rules, or we may not even be, forget the best people, the right people, or the right
yeah.
uh, organisms or beings to evaluate those rules. And that's where we get into the idea of faith.
Yes. Yeah, and like you're saying, I guess the best way for me to kind of counter what you were saying is like if we at least look into a specific scripture, like the teachings of Jesus, where Jesus says, like for example, love thy neighbor. He's stating implicitly that like there needs to be an action of love, kind of meaning that love is a positive thing. So he would be stating that whether we know it or not, whether God says death and whatever is fine, etc. that there is love is a good thing and that we should help others and we should do these things. So I think in the scriptures of particular religions, probably all religions, it's saying that there is good and bad. But of course, we could say that a higher power, if it is unknown, not like a God that we currently understand in scripture, that, there could be a thing where it's just like, yeah, death is not bad. Killing someone isn't really inherently bad. This is kind of the way nature works. It's just part of it. But when it comes to certain things like, Christianity, Islam, like Hinduism, Buddhism, I'm sure a lot of it, not all of it, but I'm sure a lot of it does talk about how to be a good person and like spread positivity or love to some capacity and like not do harm to others. So I think there is kind of a way that it does say that there is good or bad, at least the way that we should be perceiving it given the scriptures. So what I'm saying. If you at least look at
Yeah,
a particular scripture,
that's a good point you made because maybe I'll give the idea that okay, God gives these rules to the human species which we should follow in order to be a good person and perhaps rise up after death, right?
right,
So you might say perhaps that's why we have killing is bad, for example.
right,
Murder is frowned upon, thievery is frowned upon, adultery is frowned upon in many
yeah,
religions because the idea is that those specific acts that you commit, right, sin, ultimately divert you from loving God. So
right.
that's the main objective, right, is to love God for whatever religion you have. That's my belief, at least. If you love God, whatever religion that you are, well, it doesn't really matter because uh, well, at least to me, it doesn't matter which God that you love because that's the point of religion as a whole.
Right. I will say, in my opinion, that also some things that I think that are not a good thing is when people believe in a God based on fear. Let's just say eternal hell. I think that it's a very negative space to be in because then you're always fearing that if you do something bad, then you're just like banished to hell forever. And I think it's also very important to look at like children when you raise children and you teach them these things. Like, I wonder what it would look like if you just raise kids, I guess somehow like with an experiment where you didn't teach them about religion at all, and at what age and when would they start discussing their existence in the world around them? I think I want to know what that looks like naturally without a pre-indoctrination based on parenting or churches or whatever it is, just out of curiosity of an experiment, because that would actually maybe tell us better, especially in this day and age of technology. That could give us a better understanding of like a true core value and a fundamental view from like a blank slate rather than, I guess, in a sense, like a corrupted mind. Because, in my opinion, a lot of misinterpretations probably have happened a lot with religion, and I think that there's like so many subgenres of Christianity, for example,
Yeah.
that like one believes this, one believes another. I would like to know if there was this experiment, what they would believe as a human being to the core, just based on their intuition and limited knowledge. What do you think?
I think that'd be an interesting experiment to run. It would never succeed or never be that practical, in my opinion, because of the nature of human beings as well. And you can't
Yeah,
isolate someone from society, but then also study them, I would
that's
imagine.
true.
And I don't know, I guess you could put them in a forest, but they'd probably die. So that would not be ideal because murder is bad.
Yes, that's true. Well, at least that's what we are told is bad.
That
I
is
mean,
what we are told, and some
yeah, I
people
can.
disagree, but
Yeah, I can say inherently, like another thing too is like people say that we need religion so people don't do bad things, and it's like I'm not religious, but I have a moral compass based on emotion, and I can
yeah, I
understand
agree with that.
like emotional distress, right? So it's like I know that if I got stabbed, it would hurt real bad, and I don't want anyone to do that to me, so I'm not going to do that to them. Especially just the simple idea that like if you stab someone, maybe they stab you back. You're just allowing the situation to happen. Like so, I think I think a lot of people put so much pressure and so much emphasis on like keeping a clean society based on religion, but really all that tells me is like, so if there wasn't this belief, then everyone's just going to be bad. Like, you know what I mean? It's like I
Yeah,
don't
like
know.
people are naturally born evil.
Right.
Yeah, I don't think so, but if you always live in the fear that you're going to a bad place, well then you may not live in the hope that you're going to a good place.
That's a good
And
point.
the way to get to that place is through prayer, right? So
Mm-hmm.
whether that's a prayer to a specific God or in Stoic philosophy, for example, that prayer is seen as gratitude. So
Interesting.
either way you look at it, from maybe a gratitude perspective or a kneeling down perspective going towards a God, you may be kneeling down, right? But you're looking up. Or you may be internally reflecting about the past with gratitude, but you're looking towards the future. You're looking up towards the future because you are grateful for whatever you have in the present moment, or the past, or your
Yeah.
circumstances, or whatnot, as opposed to living in fear of those circumstances, or living in anguish of those circumstances, and of the, I guess the main thing is circumstances when you talk about gratitude.
Yeah.
Yeah, what do you think?
I think kind of going off that idea, like I think it's easy to in religion to say like when something bad happens, like, oh, this is God testing me, and then when something good happens, oh, this is a blessing from God. And it's like you can easily always assort anything to a higher power and just say that this is the cause. And there's nothing you can really say to like deny that because of the faith. And because the faith is not like measurable, because we don't know if the existence of God is real, I think it's very easy for anyone to say when something good happens, like God was looking out for me, or like I saw God, or God spoke to me, and like I feel like the brain can also play tricks, and I think there's a lot of people that like kind of believe that. But the same way, I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I think religion is a really good way for people to cope with existence, especially if you're in a rough spot, and kind of keeping in mind that a lot of people, let's say they go through drugs, they will find, for example, there's a church near me where it's not like a church that you go to when you're kind of brought up in like it's a nuclear family. It's like more of a church that you come to when you're seeking it out. Like they want people to seek it out and go there. And so you have a lot of people who were on drugs or who went to jail for doing something. You know, sometimes they're like single moms or they're like divorced or they seek it out. And a lot of these people are very passionate. And I think it's a much stronger foundation when you're actively seeking it out versus just kind of being born and brought into it. And I think that's a very powerful aspect. And it actually religion almost loses its potency when you're just kind of forced to like go to church every Sunday and without like any type of reason. And so I think that this like almost machinery of always constant prayer, always going to church, always doing this and that, unless you truly believe it, I think can actually hinder people's like connection to God, for example, if they want to have that. What do you think?
I think that's a very interesting take. So let me paraphrase what you're saying. You're saying that a, I'll just say a constant blanket of God is not as potent as maybe a, I don't know why I use the word blanket, but a constant blanket of God is not as potent as, I guess, just going out and seeking it and being upfront with it and being face to face. I still don't know why I use the word blanket, but I digress.
You
But
good?
that's what you're trying to say, right? Is the more
Yeah,
potent you are, the faster you can improve. And I would say yes, that is true, especially with learning different skills in life, right? If you dive
yeah,
very deep into them of your own accord, then you will learn them very fast, and you'll pick up different things, and you'll be interested, and you will ask all the right, I won't say right questions, but you'll ask all the questions because you want to understand every part of what is happening. For example, I'm learning about computer hardware now. I'm trying to get my hands dirty with that. So when I ask, or when I'm working with it, I'm always asking people, especially if they help me, like, hey, what is that? What is that part? What are you doing? Why are you doing that? And I'm sure people in your church close to you, the same people, the people would be asking the same questions. Like, why is this? Okay, what is that? Okay, who is this God?
yeah,
Why is he this God?
right,
And when you ask all these questions and you keep poking at the surface, if you poke at the surface with a needle or if you poke at the surface with an axe, you're still poking at that surface and you're still questioning it, I would say.
yeah,
Um, but yeah,
yeah.
maybe in the example of you're always brought up in a nuclear family and you always go to church, maybe you're not even poking at all. You're just there.
Conforming,
I don't know
you
about
know.
conforming, but
It's if you at least if you didn't have a choice, then I feel, and you're not really into it, then I
okay.
feel like in that case,
Yeah,
uh,
it's out of self, or it's out of, yeah, maybe self-interest for the parent,
right,
right? If the parent takes their kid to church, maybe it's out of self-interest because They
Right.
think they know what's best for the child.
Yeah. And there's also kind of an interesting, like, so aside from like religion and God, but in terms of speaking about like what other things it could be, there's some interesting ideas that I know Alan Watts has talked on this. Is that like life, when it comes to life, like every living thing that has ever lived, like we will all have that experience. It's almost like every, you know how they say like time is happening all at once, given if you're looking outside of it. So it's like to start and finish can happen. You know what I mean? So it's like almost like everything is happening all at once, given a certain point. So I think
Sure.
it's an interesting idea that, well, that it's like when you die and
Yeah.
like everything goes blank and like you're dead, it's almost like the whole universe is then ending too, because your perception of time is gone. And that may as well just be that if there's an end to the universe, then it already has happened. So it could be that when you die, it's like the universe has just ended. But like it's just the perception change. You know what I mean by, isn't that interesting? It's something I actually thought of myself.
Like when you die, you believe that that's it, but it's really not.
Well, so when I die, people
Yeah.
are still going to be living after me, and there's going to
Right.
be a lot of time, billions of years. But eventually, if there is an end to the universe, it will end. And since I'm dead and there's no passage of time in my perception, that it may
Oh,
as well
okay.
have been that the universe has ended already, right when I die, which is like what death is.
Right, you're
Because,
saying you skip forward to that heat death of the
yeah,
universe. I see.
right, just to the very end when existence ceases. You know, like Alan Watts said, it could be that like there's like some sort of like collective consciousness where we all kind of have the same experience. Like at some point, I live your life, you live mine. Like, but we're like, I don't know if I believe in that, but it's just kind of like a non-specific religion take on like another form of kind of believing in some higher power or some like something greater. Do you have any personal beliefs that you want to share about like what do you believe in this current moment?
I like to categorize myself as a Stoic Hindu.
Okay,
Uh, Maybe the categorization is unnecessary, but I like to think that I gain practical knowledge for everyday tasks or everyday lessons from Stoic philosophy. But then for things like God, where maybe I don't understand it fully in Stoicism, then I turn towards my Hindu roots and I try and get information from there, or I believe, okay, this person is the God, and okay, maybe this is what they said, or this is what they told me to practice or believe.
right.
And yeah, to answer your question, I think I try and integrate both, like to
Do you
some
do you
aspect.
Do you
Yeah.
think you would have been a Hindu if you weren't raised Hindu?
No, I don't think so.
You know,
No,
it's an
but
interesting point.
it makes at least the temple I go to, it seems simple enough, and the people are nice, and the whole idea of that religion makes sense to me. And
Yeah,
I may not understand all the scripture, I definitely don't, but the idea and the practical knowledge, and I think the ideas that are common between the religions, that makes
right.
sense. And I think even if I was in a different religion like Christianity or Islam, I would learn those same fundamentals.
Yeah,
Yeah, maybe as you know, as an early 20-year-old, I would have the same fundamental baseline that I would
right.
with any other religion. How about you? I'll ask you the same question. What
Sure.
do you feel? What do you ask me? What do you feel right now? Something
Yeah, like
like
in
that.
your current moment, yeah, kind of like because I know things change, but I would say I'm definitely also I would like to. I would say like stoic in the sense that I know it's a philosophy, but like you said, it almost does feel like a religion sometimes because we lean on it so much. Um, and then I would say I'm also like an atheist. But I look at a lot of religions as philosophies of life,
I see.
and
Okay.
I think that Jesus. There's a lot of evidence that says that he existed, and I'm not going to deny the evidence if it's true. But regardless, the teachings that came from Jesus, I think, are great. They're great ways to live. They're about harmony. They're about not. They're not like the Old Testament was like an eye for an eye. Like if you do something bad, I'll do something bad back. And Jesus was like, this is not a way to live because he was all about forgiveness. And I think it's very important to have its place for forgiveness. I think it's important to love people even without expecting anything in return. All the Ten Commandments are pretty good, like to just not be hurting people and to maintaining love and maintaining authenticity and integrity in your life. And I think that can get interchanged with stoicism all the time. and I like to take bits from like Buddha and Zen. I think it's important to practice like mindfulness. I think it's important to understand that when you're kind of overshooting your desires, like to keep that in check. But I wouldn't. I think what turns me off the most about most all religions is that like the mythical aspect of it. The idea that like let's just say like Adam and Eve, and there's like a talking snake with the apple, and it's like don't eat the apple. Like I just can't believe that, and I can't believe that there's a God that, especially in Christian religions, is always referred to as like a he. Like, what does he have? Chromosomes? Does he have a beard? Like a dude? When I'm sure that's just the way they kind of represent God, and then maybe they don't actually believe that, but that's just the way that a lot of people I think view God. And also when it comes to God and Jesus, like a lot of places I see in churches that I've been into, they represent Jesus as a white guy. When Jesus spoke Aramaic, I think it was called, and he was like brown skinned Middle Eastern. When people think about Jesus, they do not think of, I know plenty of people, and I've seen online plenty of people in the South that'll be like, oh, like the damn Muslims or something like that. But it's like like Jesus was like a part of that, and you're saying that like they have the correlation is so off. And I think a lot of people just, and that tells me that a lot of people just believe things because the way that they were taught it,
Mm,
and not the trueness of it, which throws me off a lot. Because then it's like, well, if I believe something, how do I know the authenticity of it? There's probably so many different variables that I'm not even thinking about that would take millions of years to think about everything. And it's hard for me to believe in something that it has to. I'm about science. It has to be scientifically measurable. There has to be something about it. And if there is a God, like why not reveal yourself and like stuff like that. Like I don't know, just kind of like normal stuff that I guess most people ask early on in religion. I still just beg those questions, and I don't know. I've talked to a lot of religious people, and it always comes down to faith. Really, when it comes to like a question that can't really be answered by like our natural reality. Um, but I always think that it's good. I pick from a lot of religious philosophies and to live my life in a certain way. But yeah,
mm. Yeah, I don't know.
that's
I can't really ask you a specific question on more details, but yeah, I think what
yeah,
you said is correct. It boils down to faith.
yeah,
And so whatever
yeah,
you have faith in, well, then you have to have faith and assume that it all works out in the right way. But the right way is defined again from your human point of view, not from the God's point of view or the nature of the universe, right?
right,
Especially when you die and when things happen beyond that or don't happen, well, then that's not up to you anymore. It's up to
right,
something else, whether that's a higher power or just, I don't know, some other power, some other change, some faculty
right.
of change.
Yeah, it's very interesting how long religion has. I mean, not even how long religion has persisted throughout human history. Almost since the beginning, there's always been a belief in God. There's always been religions. There's been wars over religions. That's how like intense it gets. And there's people every day think that like they're they I shouldn't say they think, but like they talk to God. They God has their back, and they lean on God in hard times. And it's something that I think it's something that is timeless because it's not measurable and it's not factual. It's faith. It's timeless. You can't really. It's not something that you can just be like, oh no, that was a thing of the past, because we're always going to want something to cling on to when we have nothing left. And it's a really good tool. I'm viewing it as a tool for other people to be like, their thing, but like it's a good thing to have in your, I don't know, not in your repertoire. I'm thinking chess, but like in your toolbox, I guess. I don't know, to like be able to lean on and learn from. And there's a lot of information that you can apply to your everyday life. But yeah, I mean, I guess that's what I think.
Hmm. Well, I think we'll leave it at that.
Yeah,
Just
a little bit of a different
oh yeah,
episode, just kind of an
open
open
end.
discussion.
Yeah, we didn't really have a specific flow for this one, but it turned out well.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah.
thank you very much for tuning in to this episode on
Thank you,
God
thank you.
or religion. Appreciate y'all. Take care.
Peace.